The grand ballroom of Pembroke Estate radiated with an opulence that felt almost suffocating, where every corner was adorned with gilded mirrors and silk draperies that shimmered under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. The air was thick with the sweet scent of jasmine and the sound of laughter, yet beneath the festive veneer, a storm brewed, heavy and foreboding. Lady Seraphina Pembroke stood at the edge of the dance floor, her heart a tumult of emotions. Clad in a gown of deep emerald green that hugged her figure and highlighted the fiery waves of her auburn hair, she was the picture of grace. Yet, as she surveyed the crowd, elegantly dressed couples spinning in joyous abandon, an uncomfortable tightness gripped her chest. Tonight was meant to be a celebration, a farewell to a life they had known, but it felt more like a masquerade, hiding the reality of their impending disgrace. Across the room, Lord Aldrich Pembroke, her father, stood with an air of dignified desperation. The flicker of anxiety in his stormy blue eyes told tales of a man on the brink of ruin, a proud noble whose gambling debts had spiraled into a nightmare. Seraphina's heart ached for him, even as the sting of their family's shame burned in her cheeks. She had always admired his unwavering pride, but tonight it felt like a noose tightening around their necks. As the music swelled, beckoning her to join the dance, Seraphina felt rooted to the spot, as if the very marble beneath her feet had become quicksand. Suddenly, the doors swung open, and a hush fell over the crowd. Jasper Blackwood, their family creditor, strode into the ballroom like a dark specter, his presence more chilling than the autumn wind. Dressed in a tailored coat that spoke of wealth and authority, his piercing gaze swept over the guests, and laughter turned to whispers. "Lord Pembroke." Blackwood's voice sliced through the festive atmosphere, sharp as a knife. "We need to discuss your outstanding debts." Seraphina's stomach twisted at the sound of his name. The anticipation in the air was palpable, and she felt the weight of every gaze upon her. Once allies, these guests were now eager spectators, ready to witness the unraveling of the Pembroke family legacy. "Not here," her father replied, desperation seeping into his tone. "This is a celebration, Blackwood." "Celebration?" Blackwood stepped closer, a predatory smile spreading across his face. "Your estate isn't worth the ink on its deed, but your daughter, she may prove more valuable." A gasp rippled through the crowd, and Seraphina felt heat rush to her cheeks, a mix of fury and humiliation igniting within her. How dare he reduce her to a bargaining chip? How dare he threaten the honor of her family? She could feel the whispers of the guests, the weight of their judgment, and the suffocating shame that threatened to engulf her. "Enough!" She found her voice rising above the murmurs, steady and unyielding as she took a step toward Blackwood. "We will not be humiliated here, Mr. Blackwood. This is our home." Blackwood's eyes narrowed, amusement dancing across his features as he leaned in closer, his voice low and menacing. "You think you can shield your family from the consequences of your father's folly? Perhaps a marriage alliance would suffice. It would keep your family's dignity intact. At a price." The implications of his words sent a chill down Seraphina's spine, but a fire ignited within her. She would not allow herself to be a pawn in this cruel game. "We will leave, father," she declared, her voice rising with conviction. "This place has become a prison, and I refuse to be shackled by our past." The revelation of their impending departure struck Lord Aldrich with surprise, and his expression shifted from shock to reluctant acceptance. Time stretched as Seraphina grasped the weight of her words. The ballroom, once a bastion of elegance and grace, now felt like a cage, stifling her spirit and suffocating her dreams. "Do you understand what you're saying?" Aldrich's voice was a mixture of disbelief and fear, his proud facade cracking under the pressure. "We cannot just leave everything behind." "Father," Seraphina replied, her voice softer but firm. "What is left for us here? To be dragged through the mud by debt and disgrace? I will not stand by while our name is tarnished." As the final notes of the evening faded into silence, she turned to her father, the weight of her resolve settling upon her shoulders like a mantle. We will find our way, Father. I promise you. Yet, in the depths of her heart, an ember of doubt flickered, whispering questions she dared not voice. How many promises built on broken fortunes ever found their way to truth? The stars outside began to twinkle, casting a silvery glow through the grand windows, as if the universe itself bore witness to her vow. In that moment, Lady Seraphina Pembroke felt the stirrings of hope amid the storm, the dawn of a new chapter waiting just beyond the horizon. As she glanced one last time around the ballroom, the laughter morphing into a distant echo, she felt a surge of determination. It was time to reclaim her family's honor, to forge her own path, and to discover what lay beyond the gilded cage of her upbringing. With every beat of her heart, she resolved to leave behind the specter of disgrace and embrace the uncertainty that awaited her. The first light of a new dawn crept through the heavy draperies of Seraphina's chamber, casting a soft glow that teased away the remnants of the night's turmoil. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming magnolias, a fragrant reminder of Charleston's lush landscape, yet all Seraphina could feel was the ache of her decision tugging at her ribs. She lay in bed, her emerald gown carefully laid out across a nearby chair, its vibrant hue now a stark contrast to the pallor of her thoughts. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains, illuminating the delicate patterns that danced upon the walls, but the beauty of the day felt distant. What awaited her beyond the gilded gates of Pembroke Estate? The very notion of freedom, tinged with both exhilaration and fear, sent shivers down her spine. She could picture the sprawling fields beyond their home, a world unmarred by her family's disgrace, but the vision was clouded by the specter of her father's disappointment. The thought of abandoning the legacy he had fought so hard to protect gnawed at her conscience, a relentless whisper in the back of her mind. Seraphina? The soft, hesitant voice of her younger sister Clara broke through the stillness, and Seraphina turned to see her sister standing in the doorway, her wide, innocent eyes reflecting concern. Are we really leaving? At that moment, the fragile facade Seraphina had built began to crack. Clara's question held within it the weight of their shared history, the laughter and tears that had woven their lives together. Yes, Clara, she replied, forcing a steadiness into her voice that she did not entirely feel. We are. It is time for us to find a new beginning. Clara stepped into the room, her small frame dwarfed by the elegance of the space. But what about Father? What if he... Father will understand. Seraphina interrupted softly, kneeling to meet her sister's gaze. He has always wanted what is best for us. And this is our chance to reclaim our lives. As she spoke, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Clara's face, mirroring Seraphina's own trepidation. The thought of their father's reaction to their departure weighed heavily upon them. He had sacrificed so much, and yet Seraphina felt a desperate need to break free from the chains of their past. Will there be a place for us? Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper, and Seraphina was struck by the vulnerability in her sister's eyes. There had been a time when Clara's laughter had danced through the halls of Pembroke Estate like sunlight, but now shadows of fear clouded her innocence. There will always be a place for us, Clara, Seraphina promised, feeling a fierce protectiveness rise within her. She would not allow her sister to suffer the same fate they had endured. We will create a new home together, one filled with joy and laughter. The warmth of the morning sun wrapped around them, igniting a flicker of hope in Seraphina's heart. Yet, an undercurrent of dread lingered, pulling her thoughts back to the man who would stand in their way. Lysander Pembroke, her brother. As if conjured by her thoughts, the door creaked open once more, and Lysander stepped into the room. She turned at the sound, half expecting the silence to remain unbroken. But when she saw him, his shoulders broad yet sagging under unseen weight, her breath caught. The shadows beneath his eyes spoke of sleepless nights spent wrestling with his own demons. I heard the two of you talking, he said, his voice laced with a mixture of concern and confusion. What do you mean by leaving? Seraphina's heart quickened at the sight of him, a mixture of affection and frustration swirling within her. We cannot stay here, Lysander, she replied, her tone steady but filled with urgency. "Father's debts have become a noose around our necks. We must find a way to survive, to reclaim our dignity." "A way to survive?" he echoed, his brow furrowing as he stepped closer. "And what of family loyalty? You would abandon everything we've known? Everything Father has fought for?" His words struck Serafina like a blow, and she felt the turmoil within her surge to the surface. "It is not abandonment, Lysander. It is liberation. I will not be a pawn in our family's disgrace any longer." For a moment, silence enveloped the room, charged with the intensity of their unspoken fears. They stood on the precipice of an emotional storm, their familial bonds trembling under the weight of unvoiced truths. Finally, Lysander sighed, his shoulders slumping as if the very air had been knocked from him. "And what if I cannot come with you? What if I must stay here to face the consequences of our father's actions?" Serafina's heart ached for her brother, torn between duty and the hope of freedom. "Then you must find your own path, Lysander. But I refuse to let our family's past define our future." His gaze held hers for a moment longer, and in that silence, Serafina saw the flicker of a choice reflected in his eyes. A choice that could either bind him to the past or propel him toward a new beginning. As the sun rose higher in the sky, illuminating the beauty of Charleston beyond the walls of their home, Serafina felt the stirrings of determination within her. She would not let the shadows of their history dictate their destiny, nor would she allow the weight of familial loyalty to crush her spirit. The world was vast, full of possibilities, and she was ready to step into the unknown. "Whatever happens, I will always be here for you, Serafina," Lysander finally said, his voice a soft promise laced with uncertainty. "But I cannot be the man you want me to be. Not yet." With those words, he turned from her, leaving Serafina standing amidst the echoes of their shared past, the path unfolding before her like an uncharted map, ripe with challenges and the promise of discovery. As she gathered her resolve, Serafina glanced at Clara, who was watching her with wide, trusting eyes. "Let's begin our new chapter, sister," she said, her voice steady, a newfound strength coursing through her. "Together we will find a way to rise." With trunks packed and Clara's hand in hers, Serafina stepped into the waiting carriage. Toward uncertainty, toward hope, toward destiny. The weight of shadows may linger, but Serafina Pembroke would not falter. She would carve a path through the uncertainty, fueled by the fierce love she held for her family and the unyielding spirit of a woman determined to embrace her own destiny. As they drove away from the grandeur of Pembroke Estate, the world awaited them, an uncharted realm of possibilities where the echoes of the past would meet the promise of the future, and love would become both their greatest temptation and their ultimate salvation. The rhythmic clatter of hooves on cobblestones blending with the vibrant sounds of a city awakening. As the sun rose higher, it cast a warm glow over the stately homes and lush gardens, their grandeur a stark contrast to the turmoil that had propelled Serafina and Clara away from Pembroke Estate. With every turn, the atmosphere shifted, infused with the salty tang of the nearby ocean and the sweet notes of blooming jasmine. Yet as they approached their new home, a sense of trepidation settled over Serafina like a heavy shawl. "Are we truly safe here, Serafina?" Clara's voice trembled, barely audible above the sounds of the bustling streets. Her wide eyes darted from the grand architecture to the groups of elegantly dressed ladies and gentlemen, their laughter ringing out like music. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia and freshly baked bread, yet Clara's concern hung heavily between them. "We will be," Serafina replied, though uncertainty crept into her voice. "We must be. It is our chance to begin anew." As they descended from the carriage, Serafina took a moment to absorb their surroundings. The sun glinted off the polished railings of the homes, and the vibrant colors of the flowers lining the streets seemed to dance in the breeze. Yet the beauty felt almost mocking against the backdrop of their family's disgrace. The charm of Charleston was undeniable, but within the fabric of its society lay the intricate patterns of class and expectation that Serafina could already sense would be both a comfort and a challenge. "Miss Pembroke, how wonderful to finally meet you." A voice, bright and melodic, cut through her thoughts. Serafina turned to see a woman approaching, her gown a riot of pastels that mirrored the blossoms around them. Cordelia Whitmore, their sponsor, was a figure of elegance, with an air of confidence that seemed to draw admiration from those around her. "Miss Whitmore," Serafina responded, forcing a smile as she extended her hand. "It is a pleasure." Cordelia took her hand in a firm grip, her dark curls bouncing as she spoke with fervor. "Welcome to Charleston. I am positively thrilled to have you and your sister here. I assure you, this city will embrace you." Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, yet Serafina caught the subtle scrutiny behind them, a reminder of the social dance they were about to engage in. "We are grateful for your kindness," Serafina said, sensing the weight of her words. Their cover story was fragile, a delicate facade crafted from necessity. They were to be the Pembroke sisters, downtrodden yet resilient, seeking refuge in the warm embrace of Southern hospitality. The truth, however, their family's disgrace, was a shadow that would follow them, lurking just beyond the surface of polite conversation. "Splendid. Let us get you settled, shall we?" Cordelia's voice was cheerful, yet Serafina felt an undercurrent of expectation. As they walked, Cordelia regaled them with tales of Charleston society, painting a picture of elegance and charm. "We have an upcoming ball at the Whitmore estate, and you must attend. It is the perfect opportunity to meet the distinguished members of our community." "A ball?" Clara echoed, her eyes wide with both excitement and apprehension. "I don't know if I am ready for such an occasion." "Nonsense," Cordelia laughed, her voice bright and infectious. "You will adore it. Charleston's social scene is vibrant, and you will find it refreshing. Just remember, it is all about appearances. Put your best foot forward and the rest will follow." The words hung in the air, a gentle warning wrapped in encouragement. Serafina's heart raced. The pressure of this new world bore down on her shoulders. She had always been taught to navigate society's expectations, yet the stakes felt higher now, each glance and whisper potentially a reminder of their past. As they arrived at the Whitmore residence, Serafina paused, taking in the sprawling estate that exuded Southern charm. The white columns framed the porch, where rocking chairs swayed gently in the breeze, and the manicured gardens bloomed with a riot of color. It was a world of elegance, yet as she stepped inside, the weight of her situation settled heavily upon her. "Welcome," Cordelia announced, leading them through the grand foyer, adorned with paintings and a chandelier that sparkled like the stars. "This will be your sanctuary. I trust you will find it comfortable." The interior was a blend of refinement and warmth, but Serafina felt like an intruder in a realm where every detail spoke of privilege and expectation. A part of her longed for the familiarity of her family's estate, with its creaking floorboards and the lingering scent of history. Here, everything felt polished and pristine, and she couldn't help but wonder how they would fit into this world. "May I offer you tea?" Cordelia asked, her tone light yet probing. "It will help ease your transition." As they settled into the plush furnishings, Serafina felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, if only slightly. The tea was fragrant, a blend of spices that danced on her palate, but it did little to quell the storm of emotions swirling within her. "Tell me, what do you hope to achieve in Charleston?" Cordelia asked, her gaze fixed on Serafina with an intensity that made her heart race. "What are your aspirations, Miss Pembroke?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Serafina swallowed, the truth of their situation a bitter taste on her tongue. "To start anew," she replied, choosing her words carefully. "To find our place in this society." Cordelia's smile widened, but there was a flicker in her eyes, an understanding that suggested she was aware of the fragility of their position. "You will find that Charleston is a city of opportunity, but it is also one of appearances. People are quick to judge, and reputation is everything." Serafina nodded, fully aware of the delicate balance they now had to maintain. Here, in this vibrant city with its Southern charm, they could either forge a new path or be consumed by the shadows of their past. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the world outside, Serafina felt a sense of determination settle within her. This was their chance to redefine their lives, to rise from the ashes of disgrace. But the journey would not be easy. The weight of societal expectations bore down like the heat of the Charleston sun, and she would need to navigate the treacherous waters of high society with grace and resolve. At that moment, Seraphina Pembroke made a silent vow. She would not be defined by her family's past. She would carve her own destiny in this new world. Together with Clara, she would face the challenges ahead, embracing the complexities of Southern society while holding tightly to the hope of a brighter future. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Seraphina felt the stirrings of possibility ignite within her, a flame that would guide her through the trials to come, illuminating the path toward the grand ball arrived with an air of anticipation that crackled like electricity through the lush gardens of Charleston. Lanterns hung like stars among the magnolia branches, casting a soft golden light that illuminated the faces of the elegantly dressed guests. Seraphina Pembroke stood at the threshold of the grand ballroom, her heart racing as she clutched her sister's hand, feeling the warmth of Clara's small palm grounding her amidst the swirling chaos of gowns and laughter. "Are you ready?" Clara whispered, her voice barely audible over the melodic strains of a string quartet that floated through the open doors. The music beckoned them, a siren song that promised both enchantment and peril. "I suppose we must be," Seraphina replied, forcing a smile that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The world of Charleston society lay before them, a dazzling tapestry of charm and sophistication, yet beneath the surface, she sensed the hidden currents of ambition and rivalry that pulsed through its veins. As they stepped into the ballroom, Seraphina felt the weight of 100 gazes upon her, each one assessing, judging, and cataloging. The room was a whirl of color and movement, with the ladies adorned in silks and satins, their gowns billowing like clouds, and gentlemen clad in tailored suits, their laughter ringing out like chimes. This was the world she had been thrust into, a world where reputation was currency and social standing dictated worth. "Look at them, Seraphina," Clara exclaimed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like a painting come to life." Yet, as Seraphina glanced around, she felt the thrum of anxiety quickening her pulse. She could not shake the feeling that they were imposters in this realm, wearing masks of elegance while hiding their truth beneath layers of silk. The whispers of their past loomed like shadows on the fringes of her consciousness, threatening to unravel the delicate threads of their new identity. "Ah, Miss Pembroke, how delightful to see you." A voice rang out, smooth and cultured, drawing her attention. Seraphina turned to see Thaddeus Ravencroft approaching, his presence commanding yet refined. He was a striking figure, tall and impeccably dressed, with dark hair that curled just so at his temples. His smile was charming, yet there was an edge to it that hinted at a man well acquainted with the complexities of this society. "Mr. Ravencroft," Seraphina greeted, her heart fluttering at the sight of him. There was something magnetic about his demeanor, a blend of confidence and mystery that drew her in. "Thank you for the invitation." "It is my pleasure entirely," he replied, his gaze lingering on her face, searching for something just beneath the surface. "You and your sister are a welcome addition to our little social circle. I trust you are settling in well?" "Quite well, thank you," she responded, aware of the subtle tension in her voice. She could feel the weight of his scrutiny, as if he could see through the layers of her carefully constructed facade. "It is quite a transition." "Indeed, Charleston is a city that expects much from its newcomers," he said, his tone laced with a knowing edge. "But I have no doubt you will find your place here, Miss Pembroke. You possess a certain tenacity that is hard to ignore." His compliment sent a flush of warmth to her cheeks, and for a fleeting moment she felt seen. But as she glanced to her side, she noticed Lysander across the room, laughing heartily with a group of gentlemen, his magnetic charm drawing them in like moths to a flame. The sight of him, so effortlessly at ease, sparked a pang of jealousy within her. How easily he slipped into the role of the charming socialite, while she grappled with the weight of their family's shame. "Your brother seems to have found his footing," Thaddeus remarked, following her gaze. "A natural in the gaming halls, I hear." "Gaming halls?" Seraphina echoed, startled by the implication. "Is that where he has gone?" "Indeed," Thaddeus replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. "The allure of chance is hard to resist for those who seek excitement. It would be wise to keep an eye on him, Miss Pembroke. The stakes can be dangerously high." A knot formed in her stomach at the thought of Lysander gambling, a dangerous arena where fortunes could be won or lost in the blink of an eye. Thank you for your concern, she said, her voice steady despite the worry churning within. I will speak to him. Perhaps you could join me for a dance, Thaddeus offered, his eyes sparkling with mischief. It would be a shame to waste such a lovely evening standing on the sidelines. Serafina hesitated, the weight of her responsibilities pulling at her, but the rhythm of the music seemed to beckon her, a call to embrace the moment, to step into this new world with confidence. I would be honored, she replied, allowing him to lead her onto the dance floor. As they moved together, the world around them faded into a blur. Thaddeus's presence was intoxicating, his movement smooth and assured. You dance beautifully, he complimented, his voice low as they twirled amidst the throng of guests. Tell me, what do you hope to find in Charleston? Rebirth, Serafina replied, her heart racing as she spoke the truth that had been simmering within her. A chance to redefine who we are. That is a noble aspiration, he mused, his gaze piercing. But know that the path is fraught with challenges. This society thrives on whispers and rumors. You must navigate it with grace. I am learning, she said, her resolve strengthening, and I will not be defined by my past. As the dance came to a close, Serafina felt a sense of exhilaration coursing through her veins. The music faded, but the heat of Thaddeus's gaze lingered. He bowed slightly, a playful smile dancing at the corners of his mouth. You are destined to make waves in our society, Miss Pembroke. I look forward to watching you navigate the currents. Thank you, Mr. Ravencroft, she replied, her heart still racing as he stepped back, allowing the next couple to take their place on the dance floor. The evening unfolded around them, a tapestry of laughter and conversation. Yet Serafina felt the threads of her own narrative beginning to weave into this intricate social fabric. But as she scanned the ballroom, searching for Clara, her gaze fell once more on Lysander. He was at a table surrounded by gentlemen, his laughter ringing out like a bell, yet there was a glimmer in his eye that spoke of recklessness. She could not shake the unease settling in her gut. The allure of the gambling halls could become a dangerous distraction, one that could threaten their fragile new beginning. Serafina. Clara's voice broke through her thoughts, and Serafina turned to see her sister approaching, her cheeks flushed with excitement. This is amazing. I've never seen anything like it. Look at the gowns, the jewels. The enthusiasm in Clara's voice momentarily lifted the weight on Serafina's heart. It is quite a sight, she agreed, allowing herself a small smile. But we must remain cautious. We have much to prove. Do you think we will fit in? Clara asked, her innocence shining through the layers of excitement. Serafina placed a reassuring hand on her sister's shoulder. We will create our place here, dear sister. Together. As the evening wore on, Serafina began to grasp the nuances of Charleston's social hierarchy, the unspoken rules that governed interactions, the subtle glances exchanged between those of high standing, and the ever-present undercurrent of competition that thrummed beneath the surface. Each conversation felt like a dance of its own, a delicate balance of charm and intellect. Yet even as she navigated this new world, Serafina's thoughts drifted back to Lysander. The stakes were high, and she could not afford to lose him to the seductive embrace of gambling halls and the thrill of chance. As the clock struck midnight, the ballroom shimmered with a magical glow, yet Serafina felt the weight of impending uncertainty. The night held promise, but it also held shadows, of reputations to uphold and secrets to protect. Would they be able to withstand the pressure of Charleston's expectations? With resolve burning in her chest, Serafina vowed to protect her family's honor while carving out a place for herself in this intricate society. The dance had only just begun, and she would not falter. As the music swelled, Serafina felt the rhythm of possibility surging through her veins, a reminder that she was not just a spectator in this world. She was a player, ready to embrace the challenges and with a vibrant energy. A kaleidoscope of sounds and scents that enveloped Serafina Pembroke as she stepped into this bustling world. The salty air mingled with the rich aroma of freshly caught shrimp and the distant notes of laughter from dockworkers, their camaraderie palpable amidst the labor. Sunlight danced across the water, shimmering like 1,000 diamonds, yet beneath its sparkling surface lay the tumult of emotions that mirrored her own. Serafina had come to the docks not merely to observe, but to confront the storm brewing within her heart. Today she sought the truth, about class, about worth, and most importantly, about herself. Clad in a simple yet elegant gown, her auburn hair swept back, she felt the weight of her lineage pressing upon her, a reminder of the expectations that had shaped her existence. But here, amidst the rawness of the merchant's world, she sensed the potential for something different, something liberating. As she wandered along the pier, her gaze fell upon a figure standing resolutely against the backdrop of the sea, Ezekiel Cross. With his rugged charm and magnetic presence, he appeared as if he belonged to the very elements that surrounded him. His dark hair tousled by the salty breeze, his hands calloused from labor, he embodied a strength that both intrigued and unsettled her. They locked eyes across the bustling pier, and in that electric moment, the noise of the docks faded, leaving only the two of them suspended in an unspoken connection. "Miss Pembroke," he greeted, his voice low and warm like the sun breaking through a morning fog. "What brings you to the docks today?" "I seek the truth, Mr. Cross," she replied, her heart racing as the words spilled forth, unbidden. "The truth about our world and my place within it." His brow arched slightly, curiosity illuminating his features. "And what truth might that be?" "The truth of worth, of class, and of the ties that bind us," she articulated, the weight of her upbringing hanging heavily in the air between them. "I have been raised to believe that nobility defines a person's value, but I wonder if it is merely an illusion." Ezekiel stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking as the tide ebbed and flowed at their feet. "You speak of class as if it were a prison," he said, his voice firm yet gentle. "But the real shackles are often forged from expectations, not from birthright." Her heart quickened at his words, the challenge igniting a fire within her. "And what do you know of expectations, Ezekiel? You who have chosen the unpredictable life of a merchant over the comforts of society? Surely you must feel the weight of judgment upon your shoulders." "Every day," he replied, the sincerity in his gaze unwavering. "But I have also tasted the sweetness of freedom that comes with forging my own path. To live authentically is a risk worth taking, even if it means standing against the tide." As he spoke, Serafina felt her carefully constructed world begin to unravel. Here was a man who dared to challenge the very foundations of her upbringing, and with every word, he beckoned her to reconsider her own life. The unexpected attraction that flared between them was intoxicating, a forbidden spark that both thrilled and terrified her. How could she, a Pembroke, entertain feelings for a man of the docks? "I am not free, Ezekiel," she confessed, her voice trembling with the weight of her internal struggle. "I am bound by duty, by my family's legacy, and by the expectations of society." "Then perhaps it is time to break those chains," he urged, his expression earnest. "To seek a life that resonates with your true self, rather than the one dictated by others." The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue across the water, and Serafina felt the rush of her heart pounding in her chest. It was a moment suspended in time, a fleeting glimpse of the life she could have if only she dared to seize it. "But what if the world finds out?" she whispered, her voice barely audible against the backdrop of the bustling docks. "What if our love is deemed unacceptable?" He stepped closer still, the undeniable chemistry between them crackling like the tension of a summer storm. "Then we will face it together," he vowed, his dark eyes alight with determination. "For love is a force that can weather any tempest, but only if we are brave enough to embrace it." As the last rays of sunlight faded into twilight, Serafina felt the weight of her family's expectations pressing down on her. The image of her brother, Lysander, flashed through her mind, his charm masking the chaos within. Would he understand her choices? Would he support her or condemn her? "Ezekiel," she murmured, her heart racing with the dichotomy of her feelings, loyalty to her family and the burgeoning desire for love. The clash of her reality and the promise of something extraordinary left her breathless. Just then, a voice boomed from the nearby docks, shattering their intimate moment. "Ezekiel, we need your help over here." A call from a fellow merchant pulled him away from her, the moment slipping through her fingers like sand. As he turned to answer, their eyes locked one last time, a silent promise hanging in the air. "Think about it, Serafina," he urged, urgency in his tone. "What do you truly want?" And just like that, he was drawn back into the fray of the docks, leaving Serafina standing alone amidst the chaos, the echoes of their conversation resonating within her. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, and Serafina found herself at a crossroads, torn between the shadows of her past and the light of an uncertain future. In that moment, she realized that the love she yearned for was both a temptation and a salvation, a chance to redefine her identity beyond the confines of her family's legacy. The winds of change whispered around her, and as she took a deep breath, Serafina Pembroke knew she could no longer ignore the call of her own heart. As the last rays of sunlight faded, she made a silent vow to embrace the journey ahead. No longer merely the obedient daughter, but a woman ready to choose love on her own terms. The world awaited her, and she was over Thaddeus Ravencroft's plantation, illuminating the sprawling grounds that seemed to stretch endlessly, a paradise adorned with lush gardens and grand oak trees. Yet, beneath this facade of beauty lay an unsettling truth, one that Serafina Pembroke felt deep in her bones as she stepped onto the manicured lawns, the weight of the world pressing down upon her shoulders. The scent of blooming magnolias wafted through the air, mingling with the distant sound of laughter, but her heart felt heavy, burdened by the disquiet that thrummed beneath the surface. "Miss Pembroke," Thaddeus greeted, his voice smooth as silk, a hint of mischief dancing in his eyes. "Welcome to Ravencroft Manor. I hope you find it to your liking." He gestured towards the sprawling estate, his posture relaxed, yet commanding, the embodiment of Southern charm. "It is magnificent, Mr. Ravencroft," Serafina replied, her voice a delicate whisper, as she took in the grandeur around her. Yet, as her gaze swept over the pristine gardens and luxurious fountains, she felt a deep discomfort creeping into her heart, a discomfort born from the very foundations upon which this beauty stood. Magnificence masks the truth, she thought, a bitter taste lingering on her tongue. The illusion of wealth and security was marred by the shadows of slavery, the harsh realities of a society built on the backs of those who labored without choice. The laughter that echoed through the halls was juxtaposed against the silent suffering of those who toiled in the fields, and Serafina found herself grappling with the moral complexities that surrounded her. "Shall we take a tour?" Thaddeus offered, his eyes glinting with an eagerness that made Serafina's heart flutter, despite the turmoil within. "I would hate for you to miss the beauty of the estate." His charm was intoxicating, and she felt drawn to him like a moth to a flame, yet the weight of her conscience tugged at her, a constant reminder of the disparity that lay between them. What is beauty worth if it is built upon suffering? She pondered, the question echoing in her mind as she followed Thaddeus through the opulent halls adorned with portraits of his ancestors, their gazes fixed upon her with an air of judgment. As they walked, Thaddeus spoke of his family's legacy with pride, weaving tales of valor and ambition that painted a picture of a life steeped in honor. Yet for Serafina, each word felt laced with hypocrisy, a gilded cage that concealed the truth of the world outside. Her heart ached with the knowledge that the very foundation of his estate was entwined with the suffering of others, and she struggled to reconcile the man before her with the reality of his inheritance. "Tell me, Serafina," Thaddeus said, pausing to gaze out over the sprawling fields, "what do you see when you look at this land?" "Beauty," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "but also a heavy price." The admission hung between them, a thread of tension weaving through the air, and Serafina felt a flicker of vulnerability flash across Thaddeus's face. "We all bear our burdens, Miss Pembroke," he said, his tone shifting, imbued with a sincerity that cut through the layers of charm. "Even those born into privilege must confront their truths. It is how one faces those truths that defines a person." His words struck a chord deep within her, resonating with her own internal struggles. Serafina felt the heat of his gaze upon her, stirring a longing that both thrilled and terrified her. The attraction that simmered between them was undeniable, a magnetic pull that ignited a fire in her heart. Yet as much as she felt drawn to him, the shadow of her family's disgrace loomed large, a reminder of the choices she had yet to confront. Thaddeus stepped closer, the air thick with an unspoken tension, and for a fleeting moment, Serafina felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. "What do you desire, Serafina?" he asked, his voice low and filled with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. "What do you truly yearn for?" The question hung in the air, heavy and charged, and Serafina felt the weight of her own desires pressing against her chest. Here was a man who represented both temptation and salvation. Yet, how could she allow herself to dream of a life entwined with his when the chains of her past still bound her? I desire freedom, she confessed, her voice trembling as the truth spilled forth. Freedom from the expectations of my family, from the weight of our disgrace, and from the confines of a society that seeks to define me. Thaddeus's expression softened, a flicker of understanding passing between them. Then perhaps you are not as bound as you believe, he replied, his gaze steady and unwavering. The choice to forge your own path lies within you, Serafina. You have the power to break free from the chains of your past. In that moment, Serafina felt a rush of emotions swell within her, a torrent of hope and longing that threatened to overwhelm her. Could it be that she held the keys to her own liberation? Could she truly dare to choose love on her own terms, despite the societal constraints that sought to bind her? As they stood beneath the sprawling oak trees, the warm breeze rustling the leaves overhead, Serafina felt a flicker of courage ignite within her. Perhaps, she murmured, her heart racing, it is time for me to embrace the unknown. Thaddeus's smile brightened, illuminating the shadows that had lingered between them. Then let us explore this new world together, Serafina. I will help you navigate the complexities of our society, and together we can challenge the very foundations upon which it is built. In that moment, Serafina knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, yet the promise of a new beginning beckoned to her, a tantalizing whisper that echoed in her heart. The world was vast, and for the first time, she felt the stirrings of hope that perhaps she could carve her own destiny, free from the gilded cages of her past. As they continued their tour of the estate, Serafina felt the tension between them simmering, the air electric with unspoken possibilities. The journey ahead was uncertain, yet she was ready to embrace it. With every step, she could feel the chains of expectation beginning to loosen, and the promise of love and redemption flickered like a beacon in the distance. Here, amidst the beauty of Thaddeus's plantation, Serafina Pembroke dared to dream of a life where she could be both strong and vulnerable, where love could be both a temptation and a salvation. It was a world where she could redefine her identity beyond the shadows of her family's past, and in that moment she felt a surge of courage that propelled her forward into the unknown. As they walked hand in hand through the lush gardens, Serafina knew that love was not merely an escape. It was the key to unlocking her true self, and she was ready to face whatever storms lay ahead. The world was calling to her, and for the first time, she felt the thrill of possibility, an invitation to embrace her destiny and all the complexities that came with it. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the plantation, Serafina Pembroke took a deep breath, ready to embark on a journey that would challenge her beliefs and ignite the flame of her heart. The gilded cage was beginning to crumble, and she was hue over Charleston, illuminating the cobblestone streets with a warmth that belied the turbulent emotions swirling within Serafina Pembroke. The air was thick with the scent of salt and magnolia, but today, the fragrance felt tainted by the undercurrents of anxiety that accompanied her every breath. As she stood at the threshold of the Pembroke estate, now a distant memory, the weight of her brother Lysander's mounting gambling debts pressed heavily upon her heart. Lysander, with his charming smile and disarming laughter, had become a shadow of the man she once admired. The allure of the gambling halls had captured him, ensnaring him in a world where fortunes were won and lost in a heartbeat, a dangerous game that threatened to undo everything they had fought to rebuild. Serafina felt a pang of desperation as she recalled the last time she had confronted him about his reckless pursuits. The flicker of disappointment in his eyes haunted her, a reminder of the delicate balance between duty and desire. "Clara, fetch the ledger," Serafina instructed, her voice steady despite the turmoil roiling inside her. Her sister, ever the obedient shadow, hurried to retrieve the worn leather book from the writing desk, its pages filled with the debts that now shackled their family. Each name scrawled there felt like a noose tightening around their necks, and her resolve to confront the creditors surged within her. As she studied the ledger, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. It was Ezekiel Cross, his rugged charm evident even in the early hours, the sunlight catching in his tousled hair. "Miss Pembroke, may I have a word?" he asked, his voice deep and sincere, cutting through the tension that had settled like a fog in the room. "Of course, Ezekiel," she replied, her heart quickening at the prospect of his presence. There was an undeniable connection between them, a current of understanding that transcended the societal boundaries that sought to keep them apart. "I could use your counsel." He stepped closer, his eyes scanning the ledger in her hands. "I heard about your brother's troubles," he said softly, a hint of concern lacing his tone. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Serafina hesitated, the vulnerability of their situation washing over her like a tide. "I fear it may be too late," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "He has already sunk deep into this world of chance, and I do not know how to pull him back." Ezekiel's gaze bore into hers, a mixture of empathy and determination reflected in his features. "You are stronger than you realize, Serafina. Perhaps facing these creditors directly is the first step toward reclaiming your family's honor." Her heart swelled at his words, a flicker of hope igniting in the depths of her uncertainty. "But how can I face them? They will only see me as a Pembroke, a woman caught in the web of my family's disgrace." "Then let them see more," he urged, stepping closer still, their proximity igniting a fire within her. "Let them see a woman willing to fight for her family, a woman who will not cower in the face of judgment." His encouragement wrapped around her like a warm embrace, and for the first time, Serafina felt the stirrings of courage. "Perhaps you are right," she conceded, her voice steadier now. "But I cannot do this alone." "I will stand with you," Ezekiel promised, his sincerity washing over her like a balm to her troubled spirit. "Together we will confront this storm." As they prepared to face the creditors, Serafina felt a shift within her, a transformation from obedient daughter to a fierce protector of her family's legacy. The weight of societal judgment still loomed, but she was no longer paralyzed by it. The flames of determination ignited within her, fueled by the bond she shared with Ezekiel, a man who embodied resilience and strength. The creditors awaited them in a dimly lit room, the air thick with tension and the flickering light of oil lamps casting shadows that danced ominously upon the walls. Serafina's heart raced as she crossed the threshold, her breath catching in her throat. "Miss Pembroke," greeted Jasper Blackwood, the man whose name had become synonymous with their disgrace. His voice dripped with condescension, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips as if he relished the power he held over them. "What brings you here today?" "I have come to discuss my brother's debts," she declared, her voice steady despite the tremor of fear that coursed through her. "It is time to confront the situation head-on." Blackwood's amusement deepened, and he leaned back in his chair, surveying her as if she were an intriguing specimen. "And what do you propose, Miss Pembroke? A mere daughter seeking to negotiate on behalf of a lost cause?" Serafina's pulse quickened, but she stood her ground, the heat of Ezekiel's presence at her side igniting her resolve. "I will not allow my family's name to be tarnished further. We will find a way to settle these debts, and I refuse to be a pawn in your game." The atmosphere shifted, tension crackling like electricity in the air. Blackwood's demeanor faltered for a moment, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You think you can dictate terms, little girl?" Ezekiel stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. "She is not just a girl, Blackwood. She is a Pembroke, and she will not be dismissed." The challenge hung in the air, and Serafina felt a surge of empowerment at Ezekiel's side. Together they faced the adversary who had plagued her family, the weight of their past pushing them forward into the fray. As the negotiations unfolded, Serafina's confidence grew, weaving through the conversation like a thread of light in the darkness. She fought for her brother, for her family, and for herself, each word laced with the determination to reclaim their dignity. In that moment, surrounded by the oppressive shadows of societal judgment, she realized that love was not just a temptation. It was a lifeline. With Ezekiel by her side, she was no longer the obedient daughter shackled by her family's disgrace. She was Serafina Pembroke, a woman ready to carve her own path, unafraid to challenge the storms that threatened to engulf her. As the meeting came to a close, Serafina felt a sense of triumph wash over her, a light breaking through the dark clouds that had loomed for so long. Together, they had confronted the tempest, and though the waters ahead remained rough, she was determined to navigate them with courage and grace. In the heart of Charleston, amidst the beauty and complexity of their world, Serafina Pembroke stood tall, ready to embrace her destiny with both love and strength as her guiding stars. As she stepped back into the sunlight, the warmth enveloping her like a gentle embrace, Serafina felt the winds of change begin to shift. The past had not been erased, nor the weight of her family's legacy forgotten. But with each step, she was forging a new identity, one that would honor her family's name while allowing her spirit to soar free. With Ezekiel at her side, she knew that love could indeed be both a temptation and a salvation. Guiding her through the storms and into the dawn of a new beginning, shimmered with an ethereal glow, a realm where reality and illusion intertwined beneath the soft flicker of candlelight. The air was thick with excitement, the sweet strains of a waltz echoing through the opulent hall, inviting couples to lose themselves in a dance that promised both enchantment and peril. Serafina Pembroke stood at the edge of this vibrant tapestry, her heart a battleground of conflicting desires, her pulse quickening as she surveyed the masked faces swirling around her. Clad in a gown of midnight blue that clung to her curves like a second skin, she felt both powerful and vulnerable. A delicate mask adorned with shimmering beads concealed her identity, yet it could not hide the tempest within. Tonight, she was not merely Serafina Pembroke, the daughter of a disgraced nobleman. She was a woman reborn, poised to reclaim her agency amid the gilded cages of Charleston society. "Are you ready?" Clara whispered, her eyes sparkling with youthful wonder as she adjusted the lace of her own gown. The innocence in her sister's voice tugged at Serafina's heart, reminding her of the stakes that lay hidden beneath the surface of this masquerade. Serafina inhaled deeply, the scent of blooming gardenias intoxicating, mingling with the tension that hung in the air like a charged storm cloud. "Ready as I'll ever be," she replied, her voice steady despite the unease that churned within. She could feel the whispers of judgment lingering, like shadows waiting to pounce. But tonight, she would not be a pawn in anyone's game. As they stepped into the ballroom, the sights and sounds enveloped them. Ladies in resplendent gowns twirled with gentlemen clad in fine suits, laughter spilling like wine, creating an atmosphere that felt both intoxicating and suffocating. Yet, amidst the revelry, Serafina felt the weight of her family's disgrace pressing down upon her, a reminder that even behind the masks, the world would judge her. "Miss Pembroke." A voice cut through the din, and Serafina turned to find Thaddeus Ravencroft gliding toward her, his mask accentuating the sharp angles of his face, his presence commanding and elegant. "I scarcely recognized you. You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you, Mr. Ravencroft," she replied, her heart fluttering at his gaze, which held a blend of admiration and something deeper, a glimmer of understanding that sent shivers down her spine. "Shall we dance?" he asked, extending his hand, the weight of the evening pressing around them like a living, breathing entity. As she accepted, he led her onto the dance floor, their bodies moving in sync to the music, a waltz that felt like a conversation of its own, rich with unspoken desires. As they twirled, Serafina's thoughts drifted to Lysander, her brother's presence a haunting echo at the periphery of her mind. She could feel his absence like a weight, knowing he had succumbed to the lure of the gambling halls once more, lost in a world where stakes were high and identities were obscured. The thought of him risking everything gnawed at her heart, a dark undercurrent to the evening's light. "Lost in thought, I see," Thaddeus murmured, his voice drawing her back to the present. "What troubles you, Lady Pembroke?" "Just the weight of expectations," she admitted, forcing a smile that felt slightly brittle. "There is so much at stake tonight." He studied her for a moment, the flicker of concern in his eyes overshadowed by an undeniable magnetism. "You must not let the shadows of your past dictate your present. This is your moment, Serafina. Seize it." As the music swelled, she felt a surge of empowerment course through her veins. The evening was a masquerade, yes, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to redefine herself, to embrace the woman she was becoming. Beneath the layers of silk and lace, she felt a growing determination to step into the light, to forge her own destiny. But just as the thought solidified in her mind, a sudden commotion erupted from across the room. A figure clad in black, Jasper Blackwood, stepped into view, his presence slicing through the festive atmosphere like a knife. The laughter dimmed, and the air turned electric with tension. Blackwood's reputation as a manipulative creditor preceded him, and his arrival felt like the harbinger of chaos. "Ah, Miss Pembroke," he called, his voice dripping with mockery as he moved through the crowd. So lovely to see you among such esteemed company. I trust you are enjoying the evening? Seraphina's stomach twisted at the sight of him, a chill running down her spine. What do you want, Blackwood? She demanded, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. Only to extend my congratulations on your new beginnings, he replied, his smirk widening. But tell me, how long can you truly hide behind that mask? The truth has a way of surfacing, does it not? The crowd shifted, eyes darting between them, the whispers rising like an ominous tide. Seraphina felt the heat of humiliation flood her cheeks, but she refused to cower. I will not be intimidated by your games, she declared, her voice rising above the murmurs. You have no power over me. Ah, but power is a slippery thing, Miss Pembroke, he purred, his gaze lingering on her with a predatory gleam. And I wonder how long your family's dignity will last when the truth of your brother's debts comes to light. A gasp rippled through the crowd, and the weight of their judgment pressed down like a heavy fog. Seraphina's heart raced as the reality of her situation settled upon her like a shroud. She felt the walls closing in, the masquerade unraveling around her. But then, from the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Ezekiel Cross, his rugged figure cutting through the throng with an intensity that drew her like a moth to flame. With a determined stride, he approached, and the tension in the room shifted, the air crackling with unspoken promise. Seraphina, he called, his voice a lifeline amid the chaos. Do not let him diminish your spirit. Ezekiel, she breathed, the warmth of his presence enveloping her like a protective shield. Do not engage with him, he urged, stepping closer, his eyes fierce with conviction. You are more than your name, more than your family's history. Stand firm. As he spoke, a fire ignited within her, the embers of defiance flaring into a blaze. The masquerade was more than a facade. It was a chance to reclaim her narrative, to shatter the expectations that sought to bind her. In that moment, surrounded by the whispers of judgment and the shadows of her past, Seraphina Pembroke chose to rise. You may think you have power, Blackwood, she declared, her voice ringing clear and unwavering. But I refuse to be defined by your expectations or my family's disgrace. I will forge my own path. The crowd fell silent, the weight of her words settling like a heavy blanket, and for the first time she felt a sense of liberation wash over her. The masks they wore, both literal and metaphorical, began to feel less constricting, and she realized that the true masquerade lay in the courage to be herself. As the music resumed, Seraphina took a step forward, her heart pounding with newfound strength. She extended her hand to Ezekiel, who grasped it tightly, a silent pact forged between them. Together they turned to face the gathering storm, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The masquerade was not an escape. It was an awakening. Seraphina was ready to embrace her truth, to navigate the complexities of love and loyalty, and to face the tempest of her family's past with courage. The night was still young, and the dance of Seraphina Pembroke discovered that the path to self-discovery was fraught with challenges, but it was also rich with the potential for love, redemption, and the courage to confront the past. The masquerade had become a catalyst for transformation, illuminating the strength that lay within her, a strength she would wield to forge her own identity in the world of Charleston society. With every step, she moved closer to the woman she was meant to be, a woman unafraid to love fiercely and to challenge the constraints of her upbringing. The journey ahead would not be easy, but Seraphina knew she would navigate it with grace and determination, ready to embrace the complexities of her heart and the promise of a future crafted on her own terms. In the midst of the grand masquerade, Lady Seraphina Pembroke found her voice, her power, and the realization that true beauty lay not in the perfection of appearances, but in the courage to live authentically, unmasked, unashamed, and undeniably filtered through the lace curtains of the Pembroke drawing room. It cast delicate patterns on the polished floor, creating an illusion of beauty that felt painfully at odds with the conversation unfolding within. Seraphina Pembroke sat on an ornate chaise, her fingers twisting nervously around the fabric of her gown as Thaddeus Ravencroft, his impeccably composed demeanor, stood before her. Yet, beneath his elegant exterior, the tension was palpable, like the charged air before a storm. Seraphina, he began, his voice smooth but laced with an urgency that made her heart race. There are matters of great import we must discuss. My family, our financial situation has become precarious. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. The room, once a sanctuary of familial love and laughter, felt claustrophobic, as if the walls themselves were closing in with the weight of their collective secrets. Serafina's heart sank, a tumult of emotions swirling within her. She had always admired Thaddeus for his cultivated charm and unwavering support, but the revelation of his family's struggles shook her to the core. She had witnessed the crumbling of her own family's reputation and the suffocating shame that had followed them like a shadow. To think that another noble house was now teetering on the brink of despair filled her with dread. "Your family is honorable, Thaddeus," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Surely there are solutions." "Solutions," he interrupted, his tone sharpening, "that do not involve a marriage proposal between us." The words hung between them, as if daring her to consider the weight of their meaning. "It is not merely a bond of affection I seek. It is a union that would restore both our families' standings. We would be each other's salvation." Serafina's breath caught in her throat as she absorbed the gravity of his proposal. She had grown up admiring the Ravencrofts, with their polished manners and reputation for grace. Yet the thought of becoming a pawn in a game of familial alliances felt like a betrayal of her heart. The very notion of it was suffocating. She could hear the whispers of Charleston society, the judgment that would follow, and it made her skin crawl. But even as the prospect of duty pulled at her, another voice echoed in her mind, a voice that belonged to Ezekiel Cross. His presence was like a breath of fresh air, stirring something deep within her that had long lain dormant. The way his eyes sparkled with sincerity, the way he challenged her to break free from the chains of expectation, ignited a longing she could no longer ignore. Torn between the warmth of duty and the thrill of desire, she felt herself unraveling. "Thaddeus," she began, her heart racing as she searched for the right words to express the turmoil within her. "I care for you, but you have feelings for him." His voice was steady, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of pain. "Ezekiel Cross, the very man your family would never accept." A flash of anger coursed through her, a mixture of indignation and defiance. "You do not know what I feel, Thaddeus. You cannot dictate my heart." His expression softened, and for a moment the facade of the cultured gentleman slipped away, revealing a man burdened by his own conflicts. "I do not wish to dictate. I wish to protect you. But I cannot stand idly by while you risk your future for a man who cannot offer you the security you deserve." The tension between them crackled like the static before a storm, and Serafina felt the weight of her choices pressing heavily against her chest, for she knew in her heart that the promise of security could never compare to the yearning that had taken root within her, a yearning that was both intoxicating and terrifying. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the Pembroke estate, Lysander Pembroke faced his own demons. News of the family's financial troubles had reached him, and the revelation felt like a dagger to his heart. His brother's desperation mirrored his own, and he was acutely aware that his reckless behavior had cast a long shadow over them all. He had squandered opportunities, and now the very foundation of their lives was crumbling beneath him. He leaned against the heavy wooden doorframe, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. The echo of his mother's disappointed sigh haunted him, a reminder of the family honor he had tarnished. He had loved Serafina for as long as he could remember, yet his selfish pursuits had left him with nothing but regret. In that moment, he resolved to reclaim his sense of purpose, to rise from the ashes of his past. He would not allow his family to suffer the consequences of his mistakes. Perhaps, in seeking redemption, he could also protect Serafina from the heartbreak that threatened to engulf her. Back in the drawing room, Serafina felt the ache of indecision gnawing at her. She looked into Thaddeus's eyes, searching for a sign that he could understand her struggle. But all she saw was the weight of expectation pulling him down, a reflection of the societal chains that bound them both. "Thaddeus," she whispered, the words trembling on her lips, "I cannot choose duty over my heart. I cannot marry you to save our families, not when I am drawn to someone else." In that moment, she chose honesty, a choice that felt like both a release and a burden. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, she felt the first stirrings of liberation, a sense of possibility blooming within her. Yet she could not shake the fear of what lay ahead. For love in Charleston was a tempest, and she was standing at the eye of the storm. The night enveloped the city, and in the quiet spaces between words, the scent of magnolias mingled with the tension of unspoken desires. The stage was set for choices that would reverberate through their lives, echoing the complex dance of love, duty, and the ever-present shadows of the past. As the chapter drew to a close, Seraphina Pembroke understood that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also felt a burgeoning sense of strength rising within her. The journey toward her own truth had begun, and she would face the scent of salt and magnolia as the sun began its descent, casting a warm golden glow over the bustling streets of Charleston. As Seraphina Pembroke stepped onto the cobblestones, her heart raced in anticipation, for she was to meet Ezekiel Cross at the very docks that had witnessed the birth of his dreams. It was here that the tides of the past intertwined with the currents of the future, and she felt the pull of his presence like a magnetic force, drawing her closer to the truth of her own heart. Ezekiel, with his rugged charm and magnetic sincerity, had risen from the depths of poverty to carve a life of success in a world that had often turned its back on men like him. The son of a humble fisherman, he had spent his childhood watching his father toil endlessly under the unforgiving sun, his hands worn and calloused from decades of labor. However, Ezekiel had possessed an indomitable spirit, a fierce determination to rise above the circumstances that sought to define him. He had worked tirelessly, navigating the treacherous waters of business, earning respect in a society that often judged by lineage alone. As Seraphina approached, she found him standing at the edge of the dock, silhouetted against the vibrant hues of sunset. The sight of him, strong and resolute, sent a thrill through her. He turned, his deep-set eyes igniting with warmth as he caught sight of her. In that moment, the world around them faded into the background. All that existed was the undeniable connection that thrummed between them. Seraphina. He spoke her name as if it were a sacred incantation, and she felt her heart swell with longing. I've been waiting for you. His voice was steady, yet she could discern the vulnerability beneath his words, a reflection of the tumult within her own soul. They stood together, the sounds of the bustling port fading into a gentle murmur, and Ezekiel took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. I want you to know something, he said, his voice low and earnest. I love you, Seraphina, and I don't care about the barriers that society has erected between us. You are worth so much more than the expectations that others impose upon you. Her breath caught in her throat as his declaration washed over her, a tidal wave of emotions crashing against the shores of her heart. She had never dared to hope that someone like Ezekiel could love her, a woman of privilege, tethered by duty and the weight of her family's name. Yet here he was, a beacon of hope rising from the ashes of his past, offering her a love that felt as genuine as it was forbidden. Ezekiel, she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of her own hesitation. You know that our worlds are so different. My family would never accept you. They would never understand what we could have. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His eyes bore into hers, fierce and unwavering. But I refuse to let their narrow-mindedness dictate our fate. I have worked too hard to achieve this life, and I want you to share it with me. Torn between the allure of his words and the harsh realities of her existence, Seraphina felt the walls of her heart begin to crack under the pressure. The promise of security represented by Thaddeus loomed in the distance, a shimmering illusion of safety that had always been so tempting. Yet the raw, undeniable passion she felt for Ezekiel was a fire that could not be extinguished. In that moment, she was reminded of Magnolia, her wise and perceptive aunt, who had always encouraged her to follow her true feelings. My dear Seraphina, Magnolia had once said, her voice imbued with the wisdom of experience, the heart knows what it wants, even when the mind is clouded by fear. It is a delicate dance between duty and desire, but you must choose the path that sets your soul alight. Seraphina closed her eyes, allowing the memory of Magnolia's counsel to wash over her. She envisioned her aunt standing by the window, the evening light casting a halo around her silver hair as she imparted her wisdom. Do not let the expectations of others define your happiness. Choose love, even when it feels daunting. As the vibrant colors of the sunset melted into twilight, Seraphina took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her decision pressing upon her like the warm breeze that swept off the water. Ezekiel, she began, her voice trembling yet resolute. "I want to choose love, but I fear the consequences of that choice. My family's honor and theirs hang in the balance." "Then let us forge our own path," he replied, his voice steady, filled with conviction. "Together we can defy the odds. Love is not a weakness, it is our greatest strength. I will fight for you, Serafina, just as I fought for my place in this world." The sincerity in his words ignited a fire within her, and she felt the burden of her family's expectations begin to lift, if only slightly. With every heartbeat, the truth of her feelings bubbled to the surface, urging her to embrace the unknown. Yet, as the stars began to twinkle above them, Serafina knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The shadows of societal judgment loomed large, and the weight of her family's legacy pressed heavily upon her shoulders. But in that moment, surrounded by the intoxicating scent of magnolias and the soft lapping of the waves against the dock, she felt a glimmer of hope blossom within her heart. A flicker of courage that just might guide her through the darkness. "Ezekiel," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I choose you. I choose love." And as they stood together beneath the burgeoning night sky, Serafina understood that love was not merely a choice. It was a revolution, a defiance against the expectations that sought to bind her. With Ezekiel at her side, she was ready to embrace the unknown, to carve a new destiny that belonged to both of them, as if the very fabric of society held its breath in anticipation. The streets, once alive with the vibrant chatter of the elite, fell silent as whispers began to circulate about the arrival of Jasper Blackwood, a figure cloaked in shadows from Serafina Pembroke's family past. His presence was an echo of history, a ghost that threatened to unravel the delicate tapestry of their lives, and an unsettling reminder that the sins of the past could never truly be buried. Jasper, with his piercing gaze and unyielding demeanor, strode confidently into the Pembroke estate, his tailored coat a stark contrast to the faded grandeur of the home. He carried with him an air of authority, a man who knew the weight of secrets and wielded them like weapons. The moment he stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted, growing heavy with the weight of impending scandal. "Miss Pembroke," he greeted Serafina with a nod, his voice smooth yet laced with an undercurrent of menace. "I trust you've been well." His gaze swept over the opulent surroundings, a mocking smile curling at the corners of his lips. "Though it seems the opulence of your home cannot mask the rot lurking beneath." Serafina felt a chill run down her spine, the remnants of her family's disgrace surfacing like a storm-tossed ship. "What do you want, Jasper?" she managed, her voice steady despite the turmoil raging within her. She had heard the stories, how Blackwood had once been a trusted ally to her father, only to become an enemy when the Pembrokes' fortunes began to wane. "You have no business here." "Ah, but that's where you are mistaken," he replied, stepping closer, the scent of cigars and mischief clinging to him. "I have every reason to be here. Your family owes me a debt that cannot be ignored." The weight of his words hung in the air, a dark cloud threatening to unleash a deluge of consequences. "Your debt is with my father," she replied, anger igniting within her, "and he is no longer here to answer for it." Each word felt like a shield, a desperate attempt to protect her family's honor even as the cracks in their facade widened. "True, but it is you who must face the consequences of his actions," Jasper continued, his gaze unrelenting. "And trust me, the people of Charleston are eager to hear the truth about the Pembroke lineage. I believe the scandal will make for quite the captivating tale." As his words sank in, Serafina felt the walls of her carefully constructed world begin to crumble. The thought of her family's past being exposed to the very society that had turned its back on them filled her with dread. How could she protect the remnants of their name when the specter of their history loomed so large? Meanwhile, as the storm of scandal brewed, Lysander Pembroke found himself spiraling into a chasm of despair. The weight of their family's disgrace pressed heavily upon him, and the news of Jasper's arrival felt like a death knell to his already fragile sense of self-worth. He had always been the reckless brother, the one who had chased dreams without considering the consequences. But now, with the truth threatening to unravel, he felt lost amidst the wreckage. In the dim light of his chamber, Lysander paced restlessly, his thoughts a cacophony of shame and regret. How had it come to this? The once proud Pembrokes were now pawns in a game of public scrutiny, their secrets laid bare for all to see. He could hear the whispers of society, the judgment in their eyes, and it was suffocating. He thought of Serafina, the light of his life and the love he had always harbored for her. The thought of her facing the wrath of Charleston society alone was unbearable. Yet what could he offer her? A tarnished name and a legacy steeped in shame? The realization struck him with the force of a tempest. He had become the very embodiment of the disgrace that had haunted their family. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a shroud of darkness over the city, Lysander made a decision. He would not allow his family to suffer any longer because of his failures. The shame was too great, and the ghosts of their past were too powerful. It was time for him to disappear, to take a step back from the world that had once adored him and embrace the solitude of his own making. With a heavy heart, he gathered a few belongings and slipped out into the night, the weight of his choice pressing down upon him. He would spare Serafina the burden of his presence, the judgment that would inevitably follow him like a shadow. Perhaps, in his absence, she would find a way to salvage their family's reputation, to forge a future untainted by the ghosts of their past. As he walked through the quiet streets, he could not shake the feeling that he was not just leaving behind his family, but also the remnants of a dream that had once felt so bright. A dream of love and loyalty that now felt irrevocably shattered. Back at the Pembroke estate, the atmosphere crackled with tension as Jasper Blackwood continued to weave his web of manipulation. "Mark my words, Miss Pembroke," he warned, his voice low and threatening. "The truth will come to light, and when it does, Charleston will remember the Pembrokes not as the esteemed family they once were, but as a cautionary tale of hubris and disgrace." As Serafina stood there, the weight of his words pressing down upon her, she felt the ground beneath her feet begin to shift. The ghosts of her family's past were rising, and she knew that she had to confront them if there was any hope of reclaiming her future. Yet, as the specter of scandal loomed large, one thing became abundantly clear. The battle for her family's honor had only just begun, as Serafina Pembroke stood in the grand hall of her family estate, the walls adorned with portraits of ancestors whose gazes seemed to follow her with judgment and despair. Today marked a reckoning, not just for her family, but for the very foundation of everything she had known. The arrival of Jasper Blackwood had sent ripples through Charleston society, and now the time had come for her to confront the ghosts that threatened to consume them. As the heavy oak doors swung open, Jasper entered with a cadre of English creditors, their expressions cold and calculating. They were men who had long since lost their sense of honor, replaced instead by the lust for power and wealth. Serafina felt her heart race, each beat echoing like a drum, signaling the march toward inevitable confrontation. "Ah, Miss Pembroke," Jasper greeted her, a smug smile playing on his lips. "I trust you've gathered your family's assets for our little discussion today?" "Assets?" Serafina echoed, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "You mean the debt my family owes you?" She stepped forward, a surge of defiance igniting her spirit. "You will not shame my family further. I'm prepared to discuss a settlement." The creditors exchanged glances, and Jasper's expression shifted, a flicker of intrigue crossing his features. "And what exactly do you propose? Your family is in shambles, and the rumors of your disgrace have already begun to spread like wildfire. What can you possibly offer?" In that moment, desperation clawed at Serafina's heart. The thought of her family's name tarnished beyond repair filled her with a sense of urgency. "I will do whatever it takes to protect my family," she declared, her voice rising above the tension. "I am willing to sacrifice myself if it means saving them from your grasp." Gasps rippled through the room, and the creditors regarded her with a mix of surprise and amusement. Jasper's eyes glinted with a predatory gleam, intrigued by her boldness. "Sacrifice yourself?" he repeated, an almost mocking tone lacing his words. "What does that entail? Are you offering your hand in marriage to one of my associates? Or is your plan even more desperate?" Serafina took a deep breath, the weight of her family's legacy pressing down on her like a shroud. "I will take responsibility for the debt," she said, her voice unwavering despite the fear that threatened to engulf her. "My family deserves to be free of this burden. I will find a way to raise the funds." The creditors chuckled, their mockery piercing her resolve. "And what makes you think you can achieve such a feat, Miss Pembroke?" One of them sneered. "Do you have hidden treasures we are unaware of?" It was then that a flicker of realization sparked within Serafina's mind. The rumors of her family's remaining assets, land that had been passed down through generations, property that had been overlooked, began to surface like memories she had long buried. "Our estate holds value beyond what you can see," she asserted, her voice gaining strength. "There are properties, lands, and investments that have yet to be assessed in light of my father's mismanagement. You underestimate the Pembroke legacy." Jasper's demeanor shifted, his interest piqued. "Interesting," he mused, his tone shifting to one of intrigue. "You believe there are hidden assets that could offset the debt? Perhaps we should explore this further. I would hate to see the last of the Pembrokes squandered for the sake of a few reckless decisions." As the creditors conferred amongst themselves, Serafina felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. If she could uncover the truth behind her family's finances, perhaps she could salvage their reputation and her own heart. Yet the tension in the room was palpable, each second stretching into eternity as the stakes grew higher. In that moment, Thaddeus Ravencroft entered the hall, his presence commanding yet conflicted. He had been absent during the earlier discussions, and now his arrival was met with mixed reactions. Jasper's expression darkened, and the creditors shifted their focus, sensing the potential for leverage. "Thaddeus," Serafina called, her heart racing at the sight of him. "You need to help me. We must present a united front." Thaddeus stepped forward, his demeanor polished as always, but the weight of the situation bore down on him. "What have you planned, Serafina?" he asked, his voice low, filled with both concern and curiosity. "I believe there are remaining assets," she explained, desperation lacing her words. "If we can convince these creditors that the Pembroke legacy is not entirely lost, we might have a chance at redemption." Yet, as the situation unfolded, Thaddeus's true character began to reveal itself. The pressure of the moment seemed to peel away the layers of charm he had so carefully crafted. "You cannot seriously believe we can salvage this," he said, his voice strained. "Our family name is already tainted. You should consider a more prudent course of action, one that doesn't involve further risking your reputation." Serafina's heart sank at his words, the sense of betrayal cutting deeper than she had anticipated. "Prudent?" she echoed, her voice rising with indignation. "You speak of prudence while my family is on the brink of collapse. You should be fighting for us." The tension in the room reached a boiling point as Jasper watched the drama unfold with keen interest. "It seems, Miss Pembroke, that your ally is wavering under pressure," he taunted. "Perhaps the true character of the Ravencrofts is not what it appears to be." As the creditors began to close in, Serafina felt the weight of the world upon her shoulders, but she refused to back down. "I will not let our legacy fade into obscurity," she declared, her voice steady and resolute. "I will find a way to honor my family, even if I must take the reins myself." She thought briefly of Ezekiel's steady gaze, how he had once told her that love was not a weakness, but a legacy. The memory grounded her now, more than the cold weight of ancestral portraits ever could. In that moment, she understood that the fight for her family's honor was not just about assets or reputation. It was a battle of wills, a reckoning with the shadows of the past that haunted them. Serafina Pembroke would rise to meet the challenge, for she had finally discovered her own strength in the face of adversity. But little did she know, the true test of her character, and that of those around her, was over Charleston, mirroring the turmoil that roiled within Serafina Pembroke's heart. The once vibrant city, adorned with magnolias and laughter, now felt like a hollow shell. As the wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the Pembroke estate, Serafina stood in the drawing room, her world crumbling around her. Jasper Blackwood's words echoed in her mind, a relentless chorus of doubt and despair. "You will not escape the truth. Your family is nothing but a cautionary tale." With each passing moment, the weight of her family's disgrace pressed down upon her, suffocating her spirit. She felt like a marionette, strings cut, left to flounder in the tempest of her own making. In the flickering candlelight, she gazed at the portraits of her ancestors, their eyes a mixture of pity and disappointment. What would they think of her now? The thought twisted like a knife in her chest. She had fought so hard to reclaim her family's honor, yet here she stood, on the brink of losing everything. It was as though the walls were closing in, the air thick with the taste of salt mingled with her tears. "Perhaps it is time to accept the inevitable," she murmured to herself, the words barely above a whisper. "Perhaps I am meant to be the last of the Pembrokes." The despair that washed over her felt like an inescapable tide, dragging her under into darkness. But just as the storm outside reached its crescendo, a familiar figure burst through the door, Lysander Pembroke, disheveled but resolute. His return was unexpected, a sudden flash of light in her enveloping gloom. "Seraphina," he called, his voice a mixture of urgency and desperation. "I need to speak with you." Seraphina turned, her heart racing as hope flickered within her like a fragile flame. "Lysander, where have you been?" He took a moment to catch his breath, the weight of his absence heavy in the air between them. "I've been away, trying to find a way to help us. I've come up with a plan, a redemption plan." His eyes sparkled with determination, and for the first time in weeks she saw a glimmer of the brother she had once admired. "What kind of plan?" she asked, her voice trembling between the edge of skepticism and hope. Lysander stepped closer, urgency in his tone. "I've spoken to several of our family's old acquaintances, those who still hold respect for the Pembroke name. They're willing to support us, to invest in the estate again. But we need to confront Jasper and the creditors together. We must show them that we're not defeated." The word struck Seraphina like a lightning bolt, illuminating the darkness that had engulfed her. "You're saying there are people who still believe in us?" "More than you know," he replied, a flicker of pride in his voice. "They remember the Pembrokes as we once were, strong, dignified. We can rebuild our legacy if we stand together." As the storm raged outside, a different kind of storm brewed within Seraphina, a tempest of renewed hope and determination. But how can we confront Jasper? He has the upper hand. "Together, we can tip the scales," Lysander urged, his voice rising with fervor. "We need to gather our friends, those who still stand by us. They will rally around us, and with their support, we can face the creditors head-on." Just then, a knock at the door interrupted them, and moments later, a small group of Charleston's most cherished friends entered the room. There was Margaret, her childhood confidant, and William, the spirited son of a local merchant, along with others who had known the Pembrokes through thick and thin. Their expressions were a mix of determination and solidarity. "Seraphina, we've heard what's been happening," Margaret spoke up, her voice steady. "We refuse to let you face this alone. We're with you, no matter what it takes." A swell of emotion rose within Seraphina, and she felt her heart expand with gratitude and warmth. These were the people who had loved her family, who believed in the legacy she struggled to uphold. "You would stand with us?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. "Always," William declared, stepping forward. "The Pembrokes have been a cornerstone of our community. This is not just your fight, it's ours too." With their support, Seraphina felt the burden of despair begin to lift, replaced by a fierce resolve. The storm outside raged on, but within the walls of the Pembroke estate, hope began to take root. They would confront Jasper Blackwood together, reclaim what was rightfully theirs, and redefine their legacy. "Then let's do this," Seraphina declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "Let's show Charleston that we will not be broken. We are the Pembrokes, and we will rise again." As the storm continued to rattle the windows, a tumultuous energy filled the room, a palpable sense of purpose igniting within them. In that moment, surrounded by friends and family, Seraphina felt a renewed sense of strength, a tempest of her own making, ready to face the ghosts of the past. With Lysander at her side and the unwavering support of their community, she was ready to embrace the challenges ahead, to fight for her family and their legacy. The storm may have raged outside, but within her heart, a new dawn was breaking.
The dawn broke
One
over
that
the
promised
Charleston
redemption
skyline,
and renewal. Gilding the cobblestone streets in warm golds and soft pinks, Seraphina Pembroke stood on the balcony of her modest new home, the remnants of her family's disgrace still clinging to her like a fine mist. The air was thick with the scent of magnolia, sweet yet suffocating, and it carried with it the whispers of hope and renewal. Today was to be the day when the Pembrokes would reclaim their place, not within the gilded cages of their past, but in the rich soil of this new land. The financial crisis that had threatened to drown them had, against all odds, been averted. With Lysander's return, a man transformed by the fire of his own recklessness, the brothers had devised a plan that involved more than just gambling fate at the tables. It required sweat, labor, and a willingness to face their demons. They had turned to the community, once shunned and scorned, and found that even in the depths of despair, there was kindness to be found in Charleston's heart. Lysander, with his charm and newfound resolve, had rallied the townsfolk. One by one, they had come forward, offering small amounts of money, labor, and expertise, the bonds of community knitting tighter with each shared story of struggle and triumph. Together, they had arranged a public auction of the family's remaining assets, not to rid themselves of their legacy, but to forge a new path. The auction would be a showcase of the Pembrokes' resilience, a testament to their unwavering spirit. Yet even as Seraphina's heart fluttered with a burgeoning sense of hope, it was tethered to a profound decision that loomed before her like a tempest. She was acutely aware of the two men who had captured her heart in ways she had never anticipated. Thaddeus Ravencroft, with his suave elegance, promising stability and respectability, and Ezekiel Cross, whose rugged sincerity ignited a fire within her, challenging her to break free from the shackles of duty. The sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the garden as she prepared herself for the day's events. Seraphina's thoughts drifted to the masquerade ball when she had danced with both men, their eyes filled with unspoken words. The way Thaddeus had held her, firm yet possessive, contrasted sharply with the gentle brush of Ezekiel's fingers against her skin, igniting something akin to rebellion in her. They were both mirrors reflecting different aspects of her soul, one promising a future bound by societal expectations, the other whispering of freedom and self-discovery. As she dressed, Seraphina felt the weight of her family's legacy upon her shoulders, yet today, it felt lighter. The choice she would make would not only define her own future, but would ripple through the lives of those she loved. Would she choose the path of safety and familial duty? Or would she dare to follow her heart's longing, a path fraught with uncertainty but rich with possibility? The auction drew a crowd, and the atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. As Seraphina stood beside Lysander, her heart swelled with unspoken pride at his transformation. He was no longer the reckless brother who had gambled away their future, but a man determined to carve out a new identity, one rooted in hard work and integrity. The townsfolk looked to him not with scorn but with respect, their faith in him a reflection of their own struggles. Ezekiel arrived, his presence a magnetic force that drew her gaze, pulling her from her reverie. He approached with a confidence that belied his humble beginnings, his eyes alight with a passion that spoke of dreams yet to be realized. "Seraphina," he said, his voice a soft rumble, "this is not just an auction. It's a chance for all of us to redefine who we are. Together." Her heart quickened at his words, for in them lay the promise of a future unshackled by her family's past. The soft murmurs of the crowd faded as she locked eyes with him, a silent understanding passing between them. The auction was not merely a transaction, it was a celebration of their resilience, a declaration of their shared hope for a brighter tomorrow. As the bidding commenced, Seraphina's mind danced between the two men, weighing their offerings against the backdrop of her own desires and fears. Thaddeus, with his polished exterior and promises of a life of comfort, felt safe yet stifling. Ezekiel, with his raw honesty and challenge to her spirit, felt like a tempest she both feared and craved. As the final bid was placed, a sense of triumph swept through the crowd, and Seraphina felt a surge of hope. Yet within her, the conflict raged on. She realized that the true auction was not of possessions, but of herself, the heart she would ultimately surrender. That evening, under the glow of the setting sun, Seraphina found solace in the garden, the air thick with the scent of blooming jasmine. The choices ahead felt daunting, yet exhilarating. She understood that love was a journey, not a destination, and in that moment she vowed to embrace whatever future awaited her, be it in the arms of duty or in the wild embrace of desire. As the stars began to twinkle above, she took a deep breath and whispered to the night, "May I choose wisely." Yet even as she spoke, the shadows of her heart remained, reminding her that the past would always linger, waiting to be confronted. But she was ready to face it, for she was no longer just Seraphina Pembroke, the obedient daughter, but a woman on the cusp of her destiny, ready to claim over the Charleston harbor. The water shimmered like 1,000 diamonds, awakening the town with a promise of renewal. Seraphina Pembroke stood at the water's edge, her heart a tumult of emotions. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of change, and today felt like the culmination of her journey, a moment steeped in significance as she prepared to embrace her destiny. The air was brisk and salty, invigorating her spirit with an urgent sense of possibility. Yet beneath that surface lay a current of tension, a reckoning that was both thrilling and terrifying. Today was not only the day of the auction that had saved her family from ruin, but also the moment of truth for her heart. As she looked out across the harbor, she felt the weight of her choices pressing down on her, the duality of her affections for Thaddeus and Ezekiel swirling like the tide. Thaddeus represented a life of security, his refined charm painting a picture of stability, while Ezekiel, with his rugged sincerity, had sparked a flame of independence within her, a fire that could not be easily quenched. The sun climbed higher, illuminating the faces of those gathered to witness this new beginning. Friends, neighbors, and townsfolk who had once looked upon the Pembrokes with disdain, now assembled with hope and anticipation. Serafina wore a simple yet elegant dress that flowed around her like the gentle waves caressing the shore. Today, she felt not just like a Pembroke, but a woman of her own making, ready to seize the life she had longed for. As she moved through the crowd, exchanging pleasantries and warm smiles, she caught sight of Thaddeus. He stood with an air of elegance, yet today there was an edge to his demeanor. His eyes, usually so charming, held an intensity that hinted at vulnerability. He approached her, the tension between them palpable as he reached for her hand. "Serafina," he began, his voice smooth, yet trembling slightly. "I wish to speak with you about our future, the offer I made." But before he could finish, the crowd parted, and Ezekiel stepped forward, his presence magnetic. He was the embodiment of raw honesty, the morning light casting a warm glow on his rugged features. "No, Thaddeus. Let her speak first." Both men turned their attention to her, and for a moment the world around them faded into silence. Serafina felt the weight of their expectations, the tension of their intertwined fates hanging in the air like the thick humidity before a summer storm. She took a deep breath, drawing strength from the very ground beneath her, and felt the fire of her own desire ignite. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice steady yet laced with emotion, "I am grateful for the paths you have both offered me. Thaddeus, you represent a life of security, of honor, and I admire your dedication to your family's legacy. But I have come to realize that a life built on duty alone is a cage from which I must break free." She turned to Ezekiel, her heart racing. "Ezekiel, you have shown me a world where I am not defined by my past or my family's expectations. You have challenged me to embrace my own strength, to seek my own truth. In you, I have found not just passion, but a profound connection that transcends the limitations of our circumstances." The crowd held its breath as she continued, her voice rising with conviction. "Today, I choose not just a man, but the life I want to lead. I choose the path of my own making, one where love and independence walk hand in hand." The tension in the air crackled as Thaddeus stepped back, his expression a mixture of pain and admiration. "Serafina, he began, but she held up a hand, silencing him gently. "I wish you well, Thaddeus. You deserve happiness, and I hope you find it in the life you've built." Her heart ached for him, the man who had once been a beacon of hope in her time of despair. But in that moment, she understood that her journey was not to be his shadow. As her gaze returned to Ezekiel, she saw the light in his eyes, a glimmer of hope and joy that mirrored her own. He stepped closer, his breath warm as he whispered, "You've chosen wisely, Serafina. Together we can create something beautiful, something real." With the sun rising behind them, illuminating their figures in a golden glow, Serafina felt the tide of her life shift. This was not merely a choice between two men, but a declaration of her own identity. The crowd erupted into applause, their cheers echoing against the waves. And in that moment, she felt the shackles of her past fall away, washed clean by the tide of new beginnings. The day unfolded in joyous celebration, the Pembroke family standing strong at the center, their past no longer a burden but a foundation upon which to build their future. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their new life in America, united by love and resilience. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Serafina and Ezekiel stood hand in hand, the weight of the world behind them and the promise of tomorrow ahead. The warmth of his calloused hand in hers felt like a pledge of partnership, and she knew that they were ready to embrace whatever lay on the horizon. knowing that true love had triumphed
1
and an
year had
independent
passed since
spirit
the
had pivotal
pivotal
day
day
that had forever
shadows.
changed the course of the Pembroke family's lives. Charleston had embraced them not merely as remnants of a disgraced lineage, but as integral threads woven into the vibrant tapestry of its community. The sun rose over the harbor, casting a warm glow upon the city, and Seraphina Pembroke stood on the porch of her modest home, a smile dancing on her lips as she watched the world awaken. The air was rich with the scent of blooming magnolias and the invigorating tang of salt from the sea, a daily reminder of the new life they had forged together. Seraphina had come to love the rhythm of Charleston, the gentle ebb and flow of the tides mirroring her own journey of transformation. She had taken the reins of her destiny, and in doing so, had created a life filled with purpose and joy. Ezekiel stood beside her, his presence an anchor in the stormy seas of uncertainty that had once plagued her heart. His rugged hands, calloused from labor, now held hers with a warmth that felt like home. They had built a life together, one rooted in mutual respect and unwavering love. Together, they had cultivated a small but flourishing garden behind their home, a testament to their shared dreams and aspirations. Each bloom was a symbol of their love, delicate yet resilient, thriving against the odds. As she watched him tend to the plants, a sense of peace enveloped her. Ezekiel's laughter rang out, bright and infectious, as he playfully chased away a mischievous squirrel. In that moment, Seraphina felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. The love they shared was not just a romantic escape. It was a partnership grounded in shared values and dreams for the future. She had chosen him, and in doing so, she had chosen herself. Lysander, too, had undergone a remarkable transformation. No longer the reckless gambler who had dragged their family into despair, he had committed himself to change in ways that left Seraphina in awe. With the support of the community and his determination to forge a new identity, he had opened a small mercantile shop in the heart of Charleston, offering goods sourced from local farmers and artisans. His charm, once used to seduce fortune at the tables, now drew in customers who admired his integrity and genuine desire to contribute to the community. The bond between the siblings had deepened, marked by mutual respect and shared ambition. Lysander had become a pillar of strength, proving that redemption was possible, and Seraphina couldn't have been prouder of him. They often shared moments in the evenings, reminiscing about their tumultuous past, but also looking forward to the bright horizon that lay ahead. As the sun climbed higher, Seraphina turned her gaze toward the street, where children played and laughter filled the air. It was a scene so ordinary, yet so extraordinary in its simplicity. She was home. The weight of her family's past, once a heavy cloak around her shoulders, had transformed into a tapestry of experiences that shaped her, but did not define her. The lessons learned, the love gained, and the strength discovered had all anchored her to her true self. With a soft smile, she felt the warmth of the sun on her face and the gentle breeze ruffle her skirts. The past remained a part of her, but it no longer consumed her. Instead, it had become the foundation upon which she had built her identity, one that was fiercely independent yet deeply intertwined with the love she had chosen. "Seraphina," Ezekiel called, drawing her back from her reverie. "Come help me with this." His voice was playful, a sound she cherished, a reminder of the joy that had replaced the shadows of her former life. With a laugh, she joined him, her heart swelling with a sense of belonging. Together, they worked side by side, planting seeds of hope for the future. Each day was a new opportunity for growth, a chance to nurture not just the garden, but their love and their family. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Seraphina paused to reflect. They had weathered storms, faced the tide of adversity, and emerged stronger, more vibrant than ever. The Pembrokes were no longer defined by their past. They were anchored in the present, ready to sail into the future with courage and love. In that moment, she knew they had found their home, not just in Charleston, but in each other. The journey had been fraught with challenges, but every moment had brought them here, to this place of joy, fulfillment, and unwavering love. Seraphina smiled, her heart full. They were anchored, and there was no storm they could not weather together.